Okay, so I'm Jess Richardson, Portfolio Manager, also known as the Governance and Benefits Manager. There seems to be uncertainty over my job title. But anyway, I do all of this. Outside of where? One of the first things we realised early on we had to tackle was the definition of the stuff we didn't want to govern through the portfolio. If we tried to get our arms around all of it, we would die trying. So we set about making a definition, and we call that run. You'll hear here, we say, is it run or is it change? And we call it run change or change, which is probably very confusing. But, but this is the slide we use to explain it. And we only govern the change part of the initiatives through the PMO. And if something falls in the definition of run, which is largely about repair, maintain, update or continuously improve the assets, products and performance, but not really impacting anyone's role or the guests, or you don't really need significant help from outside the area that wants to do it, we say go away and get on with it. Those are largely a procurement life cycle, and we let people go and talk to procurements. There are still some controls around there. And if they spend over a certain amount of money, they still have to go to investment committee. But we don't try and govern that stuff in the portfolio. Under change, if you note in the box, on the arrow box on the end, you can see that we have a way of categorising projects so that we can define change to be small, so that it goes through simpler governance. If anybody wanted to see our categorisation model, then connect with us afterwards and we can share that. So once we had our list of just the larger change initiatives, which amounted to about 115 things out of the original list of 250, we had to start to work out a way to categorise that and explain it to the investment committee, so people had started to get some sense of what we were talking about. So the way we went about it was this, and this is the exact slide we used in some of those early presentations to the investment committee. So the main principle we're focusing on here is breaking down the planning horizon into quarters. I don't know about you, but trying to plan a whole year ahead in quite a lot of detail is sort of fruitless after the first, say, 3 or 4 months, because so much changes that your work is wasted, essentially. So what we do here is we introduce some new language, which I'll explain to you. So POR is plan of record, POI is plan of intent, and the delightful anachronism POO is plan of opportunity. Okay, so first of all, we divided the long list of change initiatives that we wanted to govern into, we combed out the things that were in plan of record, that they're things that we're going to deliver that quarter. So we get focus and commitment on the things we've already committed to do, so that we can get on and do them and get them out of the way. So we get as much focus as possible on those. Then we look a little bit further out and say, which are the projects that are going to become plan of record? Now, our definition of plan of record is where you get a baseline business case approved. In sort of project life cycle speak, projects that are in plan of record phases are in develop, acceptance test, implementation, planning, those kind of phases. And so you're looking out ahead to see which projects are going to switch from doing the earlier investigate and design type work to go through baseline, be approved, and move into plan of record. Does that make sense? Then looking a little bit further out again, you're then thinking about all the things you want to initiate or have recently initiated. So those become your plan of intent. That's the plan you intend to deliver if everything plays out as you expected when you started the project. Because don't forget, once you get to a business case point, the project could be pulled at that point, or earlier if it's clearly not going in the right direction. So we call that plan of intent. In our language, those are projects in investigate and design stages, and those being initiated. So the work Tom does in his solutions world. And further out from that, you've got all the stuff sitting there in what we do call the bucket of poo, I must admit, sometimes, sitting there as opportunities waiting to be plucked out. It's your turn project, you have become a priority. So they move through into plan of intent, get scheduled in. They then, if they're successful, go get baselined and go into plan of record, and obviously, hopefully, eventually we deliver them. And so by adopting that fairly simple way of breaking down the portfolio, you have already intrinsically implied some priorities. So you're implying that the things that you're going to deliver this quarter should have a higher priority if it comes to scarce resources than the next tier of things, and those have priority over the tier behind that, if that makes sense. Yeah.
Does that drive any behaviours of only focusing on what's being delivered over the next 3 months? So if you've got building a phone that's going to take multiple years,
Yes.
obviously that sits outside of your run versus change dynamic. But do you get people sort of just fighting for resource over a 3-month basis, or saying that every project they do only takes 3 months?
No, we haven't experienced that, I have to say. I mean, I see why you think it could drive that behaviour, but we haven't noticed that. If anything, projects that are being delivered, especially after like the first 2 ships, people lose interest. They go, oh, we know how to do that, you just go on and do it. And the next problem, the next fire starting over here tends to get attention. I don't know, you're sitting next to Martin, who is our Director of Technology Services. I don't know if you have an extra view on that, Martin?
Yes, I'd say that the challenge is probably, because I classify a lot of resources that do these things, the challenge is not in the current quarter, but that's the clearest. The challenge usually is in those that are somewhere between plan of intent and plan of record, because you know you're going to do them, but we've not yet get a commitment to them. So that's where the resource squabbles actually take place, because actually once you go through the process of having the financial commitment, the expectation is that, well, the project's up and running. But the reality is, if things of this scale, is you need to resource up over a 3, 4, 5, 6 week period to get that run that we need to be at. So it's always a challenge in that space to come up with the right resource level.
Yeah, good question. Any other questions before we move on? Thanks. So there's an intrinsic prioritisation within here. So we started to present the long list of initiatives broken down by these headings to the exec and the investment committee. And in fact, quite early on, we built a version that contained a scorecard to validate the alignment to strategy for the things that were plan of intent or plan of record, and to help prioritise all the stuff that was in plan of opportunity. But interestingly, there was no appetite at the exec at that time to work through and validate the scorecard criteria that we had proposed. We think this is because there has recently been a major reorganisation at the exec. This was last summer, and several new members joined the exec, and they were more intent on starting to work together as a team than, they had bigger problems to deal with basically than helping us prioritise the portfolio. So we moved on to a different approach.